Hi there, it's Michelle from CNC Designs. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in New Zealand, and I wanted to show you how to make this cute little card to send somebody some love. This card is made using the Post-it For You stamp set, a few of those stamped images, as well as some of the paper from the designer series Flowers for Every Season. Now I got the bulk pack, so it just has 4 different designs, but the regular pack has more designs. And like all Stampin' Up! Designer series paper, it is double-sided, so there's images on both sides, which is great when you're making this card because you can punch out a few images and use both sides to get you a nice look here. And so if you look closely at this card, after I've put the DSP onto the card, I've embossed it with the Scripty embossing folder. So just trying to show if you can see. Sorry about the shaking. There we go. So you can see there's some letters that are showing up on the paper afterwards. So it's a fairly simple card to do, not too many steps, not too much stamping, but I'll show you how you can do it. So you need to start with your regular card base. So if you're in New Zealand, Australia, any of the countries that use A4 cardstock, we cut A4 in half to get us A5, score that in the middle to give us an A6 size card. So you need your card base. I went with Whisper White. You need a piece slightly smaller than your card base dimensions. So this one is 14.3 centimeters by 10 centimeters. You can use the same color as your card base, or you could have a contrasting color if you want it to stand out around the edges of your top image. And then you need designer series paper. So I've just got some scrap pieces here. As I showed you, they are double-sided, so you have images on both sides. But you need a size big enough to fit into your postage stamp punch. So you can either slide it in that way or slide it sideways. I believe this is about 2 inches wide. It's 5 centimeters wide here. And 5 centimeters will be big enough to put it in either direction. So it all depends on if you have directional paper, which way you want to slide it through the punch, as well as when you put it onto the paper, that will also determine which way up you're going to put the paper. You can see, like with the tulips here, if I had tried to put that image that way, it wouldn't look as nice. Okay? And then you just need a couple scrap pieces to use our pick-a-punch. So there's you can do up to 6 different sizes, 6 different types of labels, ends to your labels, and they are in 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, and 1 inch. I'm not sure what that is metric widths, so just choose a couple widths that are slightly smaller than each other, and then you can layer that up, and I'll show you some tips to using that punch in a minute. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to punch using the postage stamp punch. I'm going to punch out several images from my designer series paper. Now if you want to save on paper, you can cut 2-inch strips, because this paper is 6 by 6 inch square, so you can cut 2-inch strips and then just punch out of those strips, as well as you can do several layers in one go, so you don't have to do each one separately. So I'm just going to show you a couple. I've already punched some out to make it quicker. So with the 2-inch strips, you can go straight all the way in there. It will fit perfectly because that's 2 inches there. So I'm just gonna put it here. So one thing with our punches, they have a flat top to them, so it makes it easy to cut things out. So if you have difficulty holding them, or they're too heavy, you get small hands or arthritis or something like that, just leave them on the table. Make sure they're unlocked so they open up, and then just slide in what you want to punch. When you've decided that you've got it in the spot you want it to be, just simply press, and you can get everything punched out in one go. So that's there. And so I made sure it's as close to the edge as possible so I could get a couple more there. Now I'm not going to punch a whole bunch out to start with. My original design, I put them all down and then I cut on the edges of the white cardstock that I glued them onto, and so I got straight edges in certain places. But I taught this at a class a few days ago, and some of the people in the class punched it, so you ended up having a punched edge here instead of having a straight edge, so I'm going to give that a go. It's nice that you're learning from people that I'm teaching. They come up with really great ideas sometimes. So the other thing I wanted to do is I'm going to change up the colors. Same paper, I'm just not going to have any of the reds and blues. I'm going to go with the greens and yellows this time. Greens, yellow. It's cinnamon cider and bumblebee, and the green is just Jade. And if you're not sure what colors come in your designer series paper, when you look at the packaging, a little tip for you, it tells you the names of the colors that are used in the pack. They might not be used on every single page, but that's the colors that are in the entire pack. So if you're trying to match up your cardstock or your inks, you can just look at that for inspiration. So that one just has too many other colors, so I'm going to use the back of it. And then just see, I'm just going to place things out where I think I might like them to go. Might have a daisy in the middle. And change things up a bit. So what I'm going to do here is just sort of design it out. And what I did with my original one, the pieces that I cut off, then I flipped it over and used the other side in other sections. But this one, I liked it how they in the class kept it so there was a little bit of white edging all around. So I'm going to see if I can do something like that. What's on the back of that? Nope. Just checking what's on the back side of things to see which colors I might want to use. So that's gonna, I don't want it to be too symmetrical. So I'm going to start like there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to punch it again, and I'm going to make sure I punch off part of the strip there. So probably in this light color area there, and then I'll have that I can use somewhere else in the card. So I need a Post-it note. So if you got papers that are too short to get into the punch a second time, what you do is you stick a Post-it note on it, or anything sticky. So I want to punch it right about where that clear, that lighter color is. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pop it into the punch. I'm trying to think which way. Pop it into the punch, hoping you'll be able to see that, right to about where that line is. And then I'm just going to punch it again, so I will get the nice edge and basically make my piece smaller. Because of that, I've ended up with a smaller piece that's still got the edges on there. And then I've got that little piece there too, so I've got two pieces I can use. The other thing you could do is if you have a piece still left, you can just put it in there and do it to different sizes. So I might do that in a minute once I decide where to place these. So that might look good right down there. And then put a bit of a green down there. And I might do a floral one, shorter floral one up the top. So basically, as I go through, I'm going to decide where to have it to get the different sizes to put it together. So I will do that off screen and I will come back. Okay, so once you get your design planned out, and so some of them I put back in the punch and I cut them shorter. This is the full size, and so this was partial size, so I just use the Post-it note to put them in to size them down. And I decided not to use that striped side. So once you decide where you want them to go, then you just glue them down. You don't have to go too crazy with the glue, because we're going to be putting this through the subtle embossing folder, and that will help to press everything in place better. So just a bit of glue. I recommend using the Tombow liquid glue, because that gives you some wiggle room. And so when you put them down, just remember you want to have, if you're doing it this way, you want to have a little bit of white around the edges. If you're doing it the way I did it originally, it doesn't matter if it goes straight to the edge, because then you're just going to cut it off. So those bits were just cut straight. And then I just use, when you do it that way, it's much quicker, because then you cut it straight and you can flip it over and use the other design somewhere else in the page. But if you want it to look like they're all different size postage stamps, then cutting them with the punch to get them down to other sizes gives you that effect, gives you that better effect there. And so that one was a bit high. I'll just slide it down. So I'm going to stick all these down, and then I'm going to run it through the subtle embossing folder. When you put things through the embossing folder, you always want them to go through with the folded edge first. So when they go through, they have to go with the folded edge. Now the writing for this is sideways. So when this goes through, I will actually put it through in the folder that direction, but it runs through there. So you just have to check when you use your embossing folder, if you have anything that's directional, like in this case the words. I want the words to show up this way. I could do my card the other way around, but I've already put my images one direction. So depending on which direction you want to do your embossing, just make sure you're aware of that when you place it inside the embossing plate. So these words are going that direction. All right, and I will glue that down and show you in a minute. Okay, so I've embossed it, and as I said, put the cardstock the way you want the image to appear. So because the words are going that way, whoop, I put the cardstock in this direction. Okay, and so even without putting a lot of glue on there, it stuck it down quite nicely. Unfortunately, there's one thing you need to do is make sure you wipe any glue, excess glue, off your embossing folder before using it. And if you put too much excess glue on the front, it will stick onto the folder, so you got to be careful of that. So hopefully you can see now. See all those lovely letters that have embossed on there? So you can't quite see what it says, but you've got all the letters. So the difference here is I've got a nice little edge of white going around the whole thing, compared to my original one where I cut. So some of the bits, some of the pieces are actually longer than others. But it works well both ways. So then we can glue that down in a minute, but let's do a bit of stamping. So when you're going to do your labels, if you're going to use the triple label punch, I think it's called, that has 3 different choices on each side how to do the labels, what I recommend is just cut a piece longer than the sentiment you want to use. So this is much longer than what I want to stamp there. And slide it in first. So the other thing is make sure you've got the right width. So what I usually do is I take that onto my grid paper and then measure it up to see the width of what I need. So this one I'm doing 3/4 of an inch. And if you slide it straight in and until it's all the way to the back, then you can press it down. If you're unsure, turn it over and just check that it's all the way to the back. So I'm going to use a different edge to this. I use this more square label edge for the original one. This one I'm doing the more flourish one. Press it down. Don't throw away the piece that punched off of it, and I will show you that in a minute. And so you can do the same thing with the background piece. Just slide it in until it doesn't go any further, nice and flat. If you're worried about it, just turn it over, check that it's all the way to the edge. And these you can do upside down as well, but you can't hold the piece. So you can just slide it all the way in, press, and so keep that little piece there. So now we have 2 relatively matching pieces, depending on the image that you have and how wide it is. You'll get slightly different. And then I'm just going to stamp this in Memento Black. And I just love using Memento Black. That's my go-to black for doing things, especially since I also like to color with blends a lot, and you need to use Memento Black for the blends. I always turn my stamp over just to check that it's inked evenly. So then now that I know where that edge is, then I can stamp it as close as I want to that edge. Okay, straight down, no wobbling, and straight up. Okay, and then cover the ink before I put something in it. Now, this is where keeping that little piece is the trick to it. So, you can either, if you got fingernails, I usually just use my fingernails to mark things, or a pencil. So, to determine where you want your other end to be, you place that little piece after you've stamped on the other side to decide where you want it to be punched to. So as you can see, holding it up to there, if my paper is so long, so if I punch it now, it would punch way up here. So I need to cut my paper to a size, and it will give me that cut out when I punch it. So holding that in place, let's see if I can do it midair. Normally I just rub my fingernail just on an edge to give me a little line there, but you can hold it in place. So determine how far you want it to be away from what you've already stamped, and then just gently mark a pencil mark there. Don't worry about that pencil mark. You see it there? It will disappear when you punch. Okay? So now we cut, we cut where that line is. So we basically have to shorten our paper. So you could just snip it with the scissors, or if you have your cutter, you can do that. So now when we cut it, when we punch it, it should punch it leaving that much of a gap. And let's test that theory out. Slide it in just like I did before, all the way to the back. Now, if you don't cut straight like what I usually do, I tend to cut in a squiggle, just check that it's lined up straight underneath. Once it's pushed in, press down, pull it out, and as you can see, because we use this as our template, we knew it was going to give it that much space. So we can do the same thing with our background piece of just Jade cardstock. But for here, we're going to hold this up to it to basically eyeball how much of a see-through area we want to have. So how much of a border we want to have around it. So looking at where you want your border to be. So if I hold it up there, I can look and I say, oh, okay, I like that much space there. Then the other side, when you put it there, you want to hold it so you're going to end up having the same amount of border, you can see there, from the cardstock on the other side. So holding that in place, I'm going to do what I did a minute ago, and just little pencil line, snip where the pencil is, and then if I punch this side, I should end up coming out with it just where I want it to be. If you have trouble getting it in because sometimes it's not cut evenly, go down, come down at an angle and then wiggle it into place. And that's also when I recommend you turn it over, because even though I did cut it to 1 inch, sometimes it doesn't slide perfectly. Make sure it's all the way to the end. Punch, pull it out, and should end up having the same on all sides. So that's how you can punch a sentiment and have it go exactly long enough for what you want. Okay? So the other thing what I did with my card is I just put a little stamp on the inside and then colored it in, because it does say sending love your way, and there's a bit of love inside. So before I put the front on it, I will just quickly stamp that while I have my Memento ink out. And this stamp set has several different images you could put on the inside. All these images perfectly fit the punch the stamp punch. So if you stamp those, you can actually punch any of those out with the same size punch that we used for the designer series paper. So I think this time I'll put the love on this side. Make sure I don't have anything on the front. I always check to make sure I'm doing the right side of the card. Nothing worse than stamping and then finding you stamped on the upside down or the wrong side. Okay, good pressure. Oh, I had a few spots in the top. Wiggled it, but that's okay. And that's the inside. So now the outside, I'm just going to glue it straight down, or you could use double-sided tape. You might want to pop it up on some dimensionals if you want to give it a bit of height. I know some people like to have different layers of height, but if you're going to send it in the post, keep in mind you can't have it too high, otherwise it won't fit in the envelope and you might have to pay extra postage. So then just layer that over there. Now Whisper White on top of Whisper White kind of disappears a bit, but because we embossed on the Whisper White, you can still see the edging there. And then glue these two bits together. Just a little bit of glue there. Onto the Just Jade. So the colors in this card I ended up using is the Bumblebee and the Just Jade. I decided not to go with the stripes with the cinnamon cider. I was looking at doing that, but I just didn't like the way they came out. So I was going to put those in a few spots, but I just didn't like it. Different. I don't think I like the stripes on that one. And then I'm going to pop this one up with a few dimensionals. Give it a bit of height. Now, depending on how long your sentiment is, usually I only use 2, but this sentiment's a bit long, so I'll pop a third one in the center, just so it doesn't sag. And you could bling this up a bit more with maybe some ribbon or cord if you want. And so the nice thing with this is if you have a spot that you don't like the image on it or how it came out, you can cover it up with your sentiment. So I think going there helps to highlight those colors and take away a bit. And then you can add some bling onto the edge if you want. That one I did a bit of the pink because I had some pink flowers in that design. This one I think I will just, because the center of the flowers is cinnamon cider, I think I will just add a little bit on there. And this is the In Colors bling that you can get. It's called the 2020-2022 In Color Enamel Dots. So it comes in each of the colors that we have for the In Colors. And there you go. So the only thing left to do is to add a little color onto the words. But that's basically the same card in some muted tones using the same designer series paper. And slightly different idea. This one I made sure everything had the punched edges. Here I just cut straight across the edges. So that's using the multi-purpose punch and the postage stamp punch, as well as our Post-it for You stamp set. So I hope you like that. If you enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe so you can know when I've got more videos coming through. If there's anything you'd like to see me make, please leave a comment and send me a message. If you would like to purchase any of the products to make these, talk to your Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. If you live in New Zealand and don't already have a demonstrator, you're welcome to contact me at michellekritchley.stampinup.net. I have a shop there, or you can just send me messages if you have any questions. And I also do a blog at papercraft.blogspot.co.nz, papercraftaddiction.blogspot.co.nz. And I've got, I'll be putting up some photos of these cards, as well as I've got other ones that I've done in the past that you can have a look at. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Bye.